Opening.
Tradition.
Good morning.
I don't have glasses. Where did I put my glasses?
I don't know. Can you find them without your glasses?
I can. There they are. Okay.
She went in the secret room.
That does not exist.
Doo-doo.
It's not that we don't want them to know it. We just...
It's just nobody wants to see somebody else's
Who
bathroom.
wants to stare into the bathroom? I mean,
You
really.
stare into the abyss long enough, so eventually the bathroom stares back into you. Friedrich Nietzsche. First draft. He had an editor that helped him out a lot.
Glasses need to be cleaned.
Fair enough. Well, let's get started. We are only on the Well Traveled Path channel today because the Facebook channel gave us the RTMP
Okay.
error again. So,
All right.
I don't know.
Who knows?
That's the way to go.
We
That's-
are just...
That's like at the very bottom of the things that need done list.
we are
so
not concerned.
Whatevs.
Besides, primarily for this channel anyway. That's
True. Yeah, it'll just
putting it
drift
on the
over
other
there
is
and
just a bonus.
be on that channel only here. We probably need to go back to that.
Yeah,
Just-
probably so. He's snickering. I don't know why.
Are you packed with peanuts and with a caramel nougaty center?
Yes, totally. Caramel. What the heck is a caramel?
You know what's in a Snickers bar?
Oh.
Mommy said you were snickering.
I was trying to connect that to, peanut gallery.
Okay,
Ah, well,
fair enough.
I was like, why would a peanut have a nice...
nougaty caramel.
Caramel and nougat and peanuts and wrapped in chocolate.
It's good stuff.
It's a Snickers bar. Meet me, O Christ, in the stillness of morning.
Breathe in, breathe out.
Move me, O Spirit, to quiet my heart. Mend me, O Father, from yesterday's harms. From the discords of yesterday, resurrect my peace. From the discouragements of yesterday, resurrect my hope. From the weariness of yesterday, resurrect my strength. From the doubts of yesterday, resurrect my faith. From the wounds of yesterday, resurrect my love. Let me enter this new day, aware of my need, and awake to your grace, O Lord. Amen.
So do we get to count this morning as yesterday? I mean, resurrect all this stuff. Can we just make now the starting
Well,
point?
oftentimes we've talked about the idea of that being almost the start point of our day. So yeah,
Because
see why you can't do that.
sometimes you read through that and go, yeah, I can just start fresh today, and then other times you read that and go, wait, but what about this morning? All of these things have already hit this morning. So yeah.
I don't know what that's like.
I know you don't. I know you've never experienced that.
Never.
You use that word. I do not think it means what you think it means.
Which we will
We will be watching.
we will be
tonight.
watching tonight.
Yes.
If you do not know where that comes from, I'm so sorry.
How dare you?
The Princess Bride is a fun, delightful, marvelous
Yes.
classic movie that both of us watched growing up, and then of course coming together.
Actually, I didn't watch it until I was in college.
Really?
I do not recall seeing that until I was in college.
Okay, I watched it growing up, and then
That's probably the difference between you and I. You grew up. I not so much.
that's not true. So, but you had seen it before we got together.
Before we got
so he was already a fan before we got married. So of course, it's just one of our favorite family movies.
It is, and it's one of those films. The Princess Bride is one of those movies that you can get on IMDb, which is a great website, which would have solved a lot of arguments when I was a kid.
Really?
Well, wasn't he in this movie, or wasn't she in that movie, or
Who is that? I know
that
that
actor's
person.
really familiar. You don't
IMDb
say.
is glorious.
IMDb.com, great thing from Amazon. Excellent use of that.
Yeah.
Anyway, you can track and you can see all the things that William Shatner has been in. It's glorious. So that you can know certain things to avoid. Unless you want overacting. Anyway.
Which sometimes is appropriate and fun, but other times it just doesn't work.
It's the Clayons! Anyway, so, but anyway, one of the things for movies is like notable quotes from the movie. You can click on the quote section, and The Princess Bride, like 80% of the movie is
It's in the
reproduced in the
quotes.
quotes.
It's probably one of the most quotable movies of all time. I mean, it is
And some of
phenomenal.
I mean, it's not epic cinema masterpiece. It's just a fun movie to watch. It's just it's an enjoyable
delightful.
movie.
And it there is something about building, and we've talked about this some at work with encouraging families to read aloud together.
Mm-hmm.
But there's something about building a family culture through story. And a lot of people don't like fiction, don't like anything that's not a biography or actual historical fact or whatever. But there's just something about the creativity of story and working that into the warp and woof of family life. And there are so many things that our family, we can just look at each other and share a quote, and you automatically know the whole
Yes.
dynamics of what that quote means. And it communicates a lot, even when we can't exactly find the words to communicate. And The Princess Bride, a lot of our family quotes come from that movie.
Yes.
So.
And I mean, to take a serious turn for a moment, that should also guide you to ask a question from time to time of, if you don't like because your family has a culture, and
Yes,
we have talked.
yes.
I know we've talked about that on here.
Yeah.
Your family has a culture.
Right.
Your family culture could be cynical. It could be mean. It could be cruel. It could be positive. It could be fluffy. It could be deep. It could be serious. And it's going to have elements of quite a few things. But if you look at your family culture and you don't like what you get, the question you should ask is, what stories are we feeding our family culture?
Yes.
And realize this, and this is one from business and church leadership principles. The saying is, culture eats strategy for breakfast. You can have a glorious plan for how you're going to raise, as a family, you have a glorious plan for how you're going to raise your kids. Whatever family culture you create will destroy your plan or enable it. You want to raise kind, loving, future adults in your family, but you feed them mean, angry, hateful stories. Guess what they're going to be? That culture will destroy them. So the stories that we feed on do have a huge effect on everything. So that family culture is real, and it definitely matters.
Well, and we have a personal example of that with our children with Toy Story.
Yeah.
We actually we introduced them to Toy Story through the second movie.
Yes.
Because it showed nothing but positive sibling dynamics. Now, we waited on the first movie until we knew that they were old enough to distinguish between the positive family dynamics of Andy and his sister and the negative family dynamics of Sid and his sister. Mm-hmm. And until we knew that when they watched it, they would actually make that, make those connections and make that realization, we actually didn't show them the first Toy Story because we wanted them only to see what it looked like for siblings. And obviously our kids fought and they argued and all that, but we didn't want to feed that culture. We wanted to feed a culture of siblings get along.
And siblings
so
get
the
along.
stories
and
that we
support
showed them
and
were
encourage.
that. Mm-hmm.
And that's really, for the most part, that seems to be what we see from our kids. Mm-hmm. And so that seems, whereas, there are other shows that feed the, peck and drum.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Nag
the stories that we feed each other, that you feed your family on, really do matter. Mm-hmm. And then songs to support them. It's actually, and we can go nerd if you want to for a minute, but this was actually a big part of J.R.R. Tolkien's academic life, was how culture is communicated through language and song and story. Mm-hmm. A lot of people think of Lord of the Rings as this great piece of fiction, but in one accounting, Tolkien wrote it as much because he wanted to prove he was a linguist, and he wanted to show that if you wanted to learn languages, you did it through story. You couldn't just create a language and stick it out there with no culture. And he did that in the midst of the 50s when there was actually effort to create artificial language that, oh, well, we'll just teach everybody this language and that'll help unify the world, and it didn't work. There are probably more people that know Kenya and Sindarin and Klingon, to get away from Tolkien, Klingon, than know at this point, though, some of those artificial languages that were supposed to help unify the world, and it's all birthed out of story. So yes, The Princess Bride is one of our family stories, and that's also stories, and so it's also worth noting that stories aren't just books. Stories are movies, TV shows, and so we share some of those from our childhood with our kids, and even some of the older ones, that were ours, that our parents shared with us, because that's also a part of the transmission of story. And so if you think it doesn't matter, realize that's how culture transmits. That's how, for centuries in the ancient Mediterranean world, that's how you taught the value of hospitality, was through story.
Yes.
Look at the boatload of Greek myths. I mean, not just a trireme, but a couple of triremes, and maybe even, a couple of triremes and a quadrireme. Two galleys and a pinnacle. But of stories that reflect on the importance of hospitality to the stranger, to the traveler, and the counter responsibility of the stranger, the traveler, to also respect that.
Right.
That encounter. So it was taught through story. Even in our own Judeo-Christian background, the Ten Commandments. You say the Ten Commandments in the United States, and two things should jump to mind. One, 10 laws written in stone by the hand of God. Two, a movie with Charlton Heston holding those stones. Why? Because the Ten Commandments stick because of story. And this is why, if you want to diverge into politics and such, this is why I'm not all that, I'm kind of ambivalent on let's post the signs of the Ten Commandments everywhere, but I would absolutely be against chiseling Moses holding the Ten Commandments off of the Supreme Court, because that ties to the story. The opening commandment is not, you shall have no other gods before me. Let's clear that up. The opening commandment is, I am the Lord your God who brought you out of Egypt. You shall have no other gods before me. The opening commandment connects it to story.
And I think this is where a lot of times the Israelites did go wrong, and this was one of the instructions that God did give to Moses through the course of giving all of the commandments was, teach these to your children. Tell them the stories. Tell them the stories. They were supposed to, so that they wouldn't forget. This is why they set up markers. This is why they set up, monuments and that sort of thing. So when anybody passes by this and says, "What is this?" then you can tell them the story. There are several places in Scripture.
How does Jesus teach?
Through story. And this is, here in the South, especially, the grandmas. Now, you stop telling me that story and you tell me the truth. We frequently confuse the word. We frequently miss what story means, because in Southern culture we have tied story with lie, and that's not legitimate.
Yeah.
Story and lie, we've got to separate those, and we've got to realize that telling a story is helpful. Telling a lie is not. And so we need to watch how we use our words so that we can actually use story and
because otherwise what we have to drop back to is use the more academic sounding word of narrative. And it's important to tie your teaching to narrative, and then we just sound like highfalutin things in the neck.
We lose people.
Yeah.
And it's just not.
But
and we lose our children when we have to use.
Children, gather around the fireplace. I'm going to tell you a narrative of days gone by.
Narrative sounds boring. I don't want to.
What if I tell you a story?
Sure, why not? Let's go.
How about if I tell it to you in Greek and call it a mythos?
And nobody can understand that.
He said nobody's going to understand that.
I said ain't nobody
I
Your-
interpreted
Your
it.
mother edited for you.
You don't need no editing.
Obviously, he don't need no
So,
editing.
so you'll look at the stories, and obviously there's fiction and nonfiction.
Right.
There's fictional stories. The Princess Bride is fiction.
It's fiction.
And so it's a good, whereas the tale of, the story of how we got to where we are in life or anything like that. We had a great time on social media a couple weeks ago getting involved in helping tell the story of how we got together.
Yes.
And, closest I've ever come to going viral.
Well, and thinking about Princess Bride is fiction, but the book that lead actor Carrie Elways wrote,
Yes.
As You Wish, is actually a true story about the making of The Princess Bride. It's really fun too.
It's a fun read.
It's a delightful book, but
Buy it on Kindle.
you want to watch the movie first so that you kind of know what's going on with the story of The Princess Bride. Then read the book. Then go back and watch the movie again, which is what we're going to do tonight to pick up on all the things
Because
that
we've now
we
all
now
read
know
the
the
book.
secrets.
They did the book as a school read aloud. Partly because it helped enlighten about movie making. Yeah.
Yes, yeah,
Learned a lot about
that was
movie making.
that was
Yeah.
educational. Yeah, sometimes here's the other thing. In homeschooling, there is this big discussion about living books versus twaddle.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's we've had that one.
We've
We've
had
talked
that
a little
one
bit
here.
about that.
I'll just kind of touch on it again, but living books are books that really teach, that bring things to life, bring history, science, whatever subjects to life, but they truly teach something. Twaddle, it's kind of the junk
Shakespeare.
food.
Oh wait, no, Shakespeare's not
Shakespeare
twaddle.
is not twaddle. Twaddle would kind of be what some people consider the junk food of literature, where there's just no purpose in it. The problem is that sometimes twaddle gets too broadly defined, and there is purpose in doing something just for fun.
Mm-hmm.
Because we need fun. We need laughter. And sometimes with school, like Stephen was working through American government, which is annoying. And
The
and then
course,
economics.
she's not criticizing the American government. The American government is annoying too.
Well, and
But
that was one of the annoying things for him was the American government doesn't work like they should. Why am I anyway? Why am I bothering? So he's working through that. Angela is working through 20th century history, which a lot of it's really, really heavy. I mean, it's depressing. And so one of the things to counteract that is to do fun read-alouds with them. Things that just kind of bring some, that we still sit together and read. We still enjoy building our family culture, but instead of having to do something that ties in with what they're learning in school, we just pick something that's fun. We don't do it all the time, but every now and then.
I had a semester that one of my PhD seminars was on the problem of evil, and I basically read 2,500 pages about the Holocaust and another 1,500 pages about other atrocities and terrible things that have happened in this world. Oh, and the Book of Job for that seminar. And I wrote papers. I had a paper every week and an online discussion every week. My dissertation, if I get it approved, what I'm beating into shape is the approval request, but it traces Arkansas Baptist response to World War I, the Spanish flu pandemic of 1918, which makes the 500,000 dead from COVID in a year look like a positive thing, which 500,000 dead in a year is not positive. But with the Spanish flu, you were doing 500,000 dead in a week kind of stuff. The Great Mississippi Flood of 1927 and finishes with the Great Depression.
It's not happy stuff. I mean,
It's
just
15
weighty.
horrible, horrible years. And how did Arkansas Baptist churches respond to those? What did we do? What went wrong? What went right? What can we learn from that? From all of those things. And I've got friends that, I was doing, one of the great things about finally getting done with my dissertation is I could finally read stuff I want to read. Guess what? I'm going to read some stuff I want to read while I write that dissertation. Like Shakespeare for every day. Yeah.
A reading from Shakespeare every single day of the year.
Yeah.
A
Just
funny approach.
some different, some different fun things. I'm going to read, I will probably end up, I'll read back through, Star Wars novels and stuff like that alongside of it, because otherwise it's just dark and heavy. And if you ever wonder why it is that sometimes I get grumpy and irritable about people who don't take COVID seriously. Spend some time in the Spanish flu pandemic and realize how bad it can be and what the limits of scientific knowledge actually are when it comes to controlling disease. When you've got something that spreads person to person, it's, keep in mind, we're only 100 and some odd years down the road from figuring out that if you want to stop yellow fever, you get rid of the mosquitoes. That if you want to stop malaria, you get rid of mosquitoes. Malaria is called malaria. It's from the Latin, from bad air. They thought it just kind of passed through the air. There are so many things, and there's so many ways, and this is not to justify levels of not bothering or not responding to COVID like we should have. There are so many ways that it could have been worse, and there are so many ways that we could still make it worse. That would be normal. I mean, and in all honesty, you had anti-mask people in 1918 too, and then they caused thousands of deaths, and the population was a lot smaller then. I mean, that's just that kind of thing went on. So you got to have some lighter weight stuff.
You do, and
otherwise,
and so that's what we've done lately. We finished it, and so now we've got to find out we've got to figure out what's next. But yeah, you got to have some. You've got to have a balance of enjoyment, and sometimes. Now, you still want to have good literature. You still want to have something that's well written. I mean, there's some stuff out there that is just like, okay, that really is just pointless.
I just finished a fiction, and it wasn't. It was just like this wasn't well. It wasn't well written. It's the first in a series, and it was a free sample intended to get you to go ahead and buy the series. I'm not going to bother. It just wasn't worth it.
Yeah, I'm really picky. I mean, you have a whole lot of female Christian fiction writers out there who just pour out novels. I'm very picky about my authors because I want something that has meat and content, good character development, some historical fun to it, well researched. So it's there is still stuff out there that's not worth reading.
And there are some authors that have some good and some
Yeah.
Michael Crichton, who is now deceased, of course, so he's not really writing anything new. Jurassic Park is a well-written book. Congo's decently written. Andromeda Strain's well-written. Great Train Robbery is pretty good. Lost World is all right. Dragon Teeth is actually remarkable. You could tell he died while he was writing that one, so it's not. You could tell that it could have stood to be fleshed out, but if he'd have fleshed it out like Prey and Airframe and Disclosure, it would have been. It was actually quite good. It was actually quite good. So you get that unevenness sometimes.
Right. So I
hadn't read Micro, but he wrote it not too long after he wrote Prey, and Prey wasn't great. Yeah.
So story is fun. Story is good.
Story is helpful.
And
it's what shapes your culture. And guess what? If you think that you can go forward without it, I think one of the reasons that certain points of view are failing is they tell lousy stories. And I think that one of the reasons that we are struggling and have consistently struggled in the Western Evangelical Church for the last 100 years to reach the next generation, and we keep slipping on that every decade. It looks worse. I think we have not done well with story.
Yeah.
We think Left Behind was a well-written story, and it wasn't. Some of those kinds of things. It's not. That's not to take a shot at the theology, but
they just weren't great books.
They weren't great. And the movie versions are worse. But they went, "Oh, this is a great movie." It's like, no. Now, from a theological perspective, it's got better theology than Star Wars, but Star Wars is a better told story. So guess what kids are going to go to? Young adults are going to go to. They're going to go to Star Wars. And then that'll shape their culture. And that'll shape their theology. We've got to tell stories better, whether they're fictional ones or true stories.
Hand your kids the Chronicles of Narnia.
Yes.
I'm just finishing. I didn't actually read them until, other than The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe and I believe The Magician's Nephew. I think I read that as a child, but I didn't read them until I was an adult. But the story there, that's good story.
Yeah. Read the Lion. Read the Chronicles of Narnia. Read Tolkien, and then branch out from there. There's a lot of other good Christian. Marion Robinson, and but that's a little bit older. That's adult. That's adult level. But read those kinds of things. Get those stories told.
Yes, but
Anyway.
work in story, and also realize that whatever anything you put in is going to come out, good or bad.
Yep.
And so if you hit, we've watched some. We have some jokes about some pretty rotten movies that we've watched. Been like, I can't believe we wasted time on that, and it's not because of, we turn a movie off if we start watching it and the language or the sexual content is bad. We just stop. No matter how interested we are in the story, we stop. So some of the bad stuff that we've watched has nothing to do with language and sex. It has to do with the bad story. And we have jokes about them. We really do.
Love you enough. Break this
finger. Stay away from Mr. Wrong.
It's a movie with Bill Pullman and Ellen DeGeneres, and it has got to be one of the worst films I've ever seen. And I've seen Howard the Duck.
It is so bizarre.
I've gotten
so
on YouTube
bad.
and seen the Star Wars Holiday Special.
But those work into your culture as well. Those are relevant. They make an impact.
It's like a semi-spoof of The Graduate and other romantic films. No. Just no.
Just no.
We do need to get Casablanca into the family
do.
lexicon.
We do. We keep putting that off, but
And
we
then
need
we
to
could
watch it.
follow it up with... Never mind. Oh. This is our hill, and these are our beans! Anyway, we should stop,
We should.
because it's getting close to 11.
It is getting close to 11, so we need to move on with our day.
Yes. And Olivia has an important meeting at 11 that she's not sure what is about. She just knows that it's an engagement. Somebody sent her a text message and said, "Hey, I need to
chat with you."
I need to chat with you about something." And so that time is at 11. So we want to be done with this so that as soon as that's. By the way, people, as a side note, as best possible, try to avoid that.
Tell people what you want to meet about so they don't stress.
If at all possible. Yeah. Anyway.
That's stressful. All right. Let me look. That looks good.
Okay.
Psalm 27, starting in verse 7. Lord, hear my voice when I call. Be gracious to me and answer me. My heart says this about you. Seek his face. Lord, I will seek your face. Do not hide your face from me. Do not turn your servant away in anger. You have been my helper. Do not leave me or abandon me, God of my salvation. Even if my father and mother abandon me, the Lord cares for me. Because of my adversaries, show me your way, Lord, and lead me on a level path. Do not give me over to the will of my foes, for false witnesses rise up against me, breathing violence. I am certain that I will see the Lord's goodness in the land of the living. Wait for the Lord. Be strong, and let your heart be courageous. Wait for the Lord. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for story. Thank you for the way you work it into our lives, and I pray that you will continue to teach us and grow us so that we can honor you better. In your holy name I pray. Amen.
Amen.
Beep. Beep, 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 beep.